A seller's disclosure is a really important part of the buying and selling process, and I'm going to tell you what you need to know on either side. When a house goes on the market, in most situations, a seller's disclosure is required. There are some exceptions to the rule. In a divorce situation, if the house is sold to the other spouse, in a bankruptcy filing, in a foreclosure situation, a seller's disclosure is not required. And if one of those situations or some others fit, then there's a box to check on the contract. But in a typical buyer and seller's arm's length transaction, a seller's disclosure is required. So what is a seller's disclosure? A seller's disclosure is a document that discusses the features and known defects of the home. When a seller is preparing to list their home on the market, they'll fill out the seller's disclosure and disclose everything they know about the property. It's a way of letting buyers know about any defects, but also about the history of the property. If there's been a roof repair, foundation repairs, new windows, these are all included on the seller's disclosure and are a way of giving a buyer a snapshot before they see the house. It's really important that a seller lists everything that they know about the property. An agent should never help a seller fill out a disclosure. An agent is required to disclose any material facts that they know about the property, but they aren't required to do additional research. And helping a seller fill out the disclosure form can increase an agent's liability. What if items are left off the disclosure? The seller is responsible for being as thorough as possible when completing that form and disclosing everything that they are aware of at the time of signing. Unless it can be proven that a seller deliberately didn't mention a defect, that seller's disclosure keeps them from being held legally responsible. However, if it can be proven that they knew about something and didn't disclose it, they can be held liable. And a seller's disclosure survives closing. So if it's determined later, after closing, that a seller knew about a specific defect, they can be held responsible. Let's talk about the timing of the disclosure. The best case scenario is the seller fills it out prior to the listing going live, and the completed seller's disclosure is uploaded to MLS. There is a box on the contract for that scenario. But if the buyer doesn't receive the seller's disclosure prior to making an offer, there's also a box to check for that scenario. You can allot a number of days for the seller to provide a seller's disclosure, and then once received, a buyer has 7 days or closing, whichever comes first, to terminate the contract for any reason. If a seller's disclosure is never received, the buyer has up until closing to again terminate for any reason. So it's really in the seller's best interest to provide that seller's disclosure early and eliminate some of the outs for a buyer. On the buy side, a seller's disclosure is a risk reduction tool. It allows buyers to look at some of those big ticket items before ever making an offer on the house. When available, I always send the seller's disclosure to my clients before we tour the house, and we both review it beforehand. That allows us to look at some of those big ticket items as we're walking through the house and get the big picture, or as much of the big picture as you can get before having an inspection. If you have other questions about the seller's disclosure or about buying and selling in the DFW Metroplex, I'd love to talk to you. You can find all of my contact information in the description below.